Hey, good morning, everybody. Well, actually, it's good afternoon. It's a little after 12. I usually give my live talk around 11:15, but I was occupied this morning, so I'm giving it now. Anyway, welcome to Mondays with Moss. And I have a question for you to think about. Okay? Do you think we can design our futures? Do you think we have control over our destinies? Or do you think, no, we don't? Our destinies design us. It's predetermined. It just happens because of genetics, because of the families we get raised in, because of our experiences, the things that happened to us from the past. I always find that an intriguing question. Are we life designers, navigators, or are we survivors and victims to our past and our circumstances? Well, I had the opportunity this past week to work with a phenomenal group of professionals, small group, and we went away to the Chesapeake and did some work on a future search, and navigating their life as a group, as a team, with the question: can we design our life and really, over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years, create a future worth living into? Or are we just doomed to be annoyed with each other, frustrated, suspicious, fearful? Well, we spent several days together and they created a shared vision of their future for 2025, and then worked together to develop a roadmap or an action plan to get them from here to there. So the possibility in doing this kind of work is giving up blaming, letting go of past regrets and resentments. No one is wrong. Letting go of being a victim and a survivor, and create the notion of we have control over our lives. Well, the result of this little workshop, took a lot of work. We all had to work very hard to make this happen. We had a successful outcome where they are back at work now, actually creating a successful future, all working together. It doesn't mean they're in heaven and it's wonderful. They have a lot of work to do. I'm aware of that because I've done these kind of workshops before. But they're on the path called designing their future. Anyway, during this pandemic, which we've been stuck in for about a year and a half, one way of looking at this, it's allowed us to pause and ask ourselves, what the hell happened? Have we learned anything? And what do we want to create in our life moving forward? So I think the genesis of this talk today came from an article I read in the New York Times by Emily Smith on what we need to process and what we've lost, basically from the pandemic. So look, bad things have happened that might have shattered some of us, but we don't have to stay broken or hide our wounds. I like what Hemingway said. All of us get broken in one place or the other, but where you mend your wounds, you're stronger in that place. So she talks about we can put ourselves together, appreciate what we've gone through, and create a perspective or a narrative that helps us make sense. I love that. I love this notion of a narrative. Now, what she meant was she was referring to psychological studies where individuals have either what's called redemptive narratives or contamination narratives. A redemption narrative is they've learned something through the difficulty. They emerge stronger at the end than when they went in. Like an illness, they find compassion. They develop generosity of others. A number of people I know have had a really hard time during the pandemic, and a number of them have what's called redemptive narratives. They say, I've learned a lot. I think that I can survive it. I don't break apart. I don't die. I was always afraid of being alone, but now I'm not. Others have contamination narratives, that their lives turned to crap. They lost a job, or they couldn't stand being alone. In other words, our stories that we tell ourselves, our narrative, have consequences for ourselves. It seems like redemptive stories, or building a future worth living into, or designing your future, creates well-being, mental health, While these contaminating stories, these negative stories, are linked to depression and the belief that life doesn't lack any purpose or coherence. So, I'm suggesting look at your stories and ask yourself, are you building something in your life? Do you really have control? And if you like this idea of building a life to live into, a future search, so to speak, living life as a navigator, here are some ideas. Number one, as you come through this pandemic, reflect on the pandemic and what has changed for you. What have you lost? Good question. What have you gained? Any lessons that you've learned? Also, what sort of life do you want to now live moving forward? Another question is, what kind of person do you want to be? Do you think you may need to work on yourself for a while? And also, are you really willing to let go of your past regrets and resentments and the old tight structure that hit us now that we've gone through this pandemic? It's like somebody once said, never waste a good crisis. So let's see what you're up to. Let's see if you think you can design a life worth living into. You can actually change your future. You can actually create it. I personally think you can. If you want to learn more about it, check my book out, Navigating for Success, on Amazon. And I think for the next couple sessions, I'm going to talk about this notion of narrative. What's the story you're telling yourself? Is it a redemptive story? Is it a condemnation story? All right? Anyway, be well. Enjoy your week. Stay cool. And I'll see you next. Oh, I won't see you next week. That's the 4th or the 5th. So I'm taking off then. I'll see you the week after that, which I think is the 12th. So to then, write a good story. Bye-bye.